Hi, everyone. Welcome to how to choose the right IDP or internal developer portal. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do today, we're going to go through some IDP basics. Why use an IDP? What is an IDP? When do you need an IDP? I'm going to keep using this acronym, by the way, and it's Internal Developer Portal. I'm going to talk through our methodology for IDP adoption, right? What does this actually look like? How should you go about thinking about rolling this out and getting value from the tool? We're talking about evaluating open source versus commercial IDPs, right? We're going to talk about why it is you might go with one or the other. Candidly, right? We're for ops level, as my t-shirt and Zoom background and the logo might suggest. But we want to make sure you find whatever solution makes sense for you. For our customers, that just looks like us. For our other companies, we understand there are other solutions out there that work better, and that's great too. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Before we jump into that, though, I want to talk about who I am and why I'm doing here. So I've been at ops level now for almost 4 years. I've led customer success. Customer success, our job is to ensure that our customers are getting value from the tool. They're onboarded, they're getting what they paid for, they renew, right, when the contract is up. And so what that means is that I've worked with now over 50 organizations in various different sizes at various different stages in their own DevOps journeys, all of whom are looking to build and deploy their own internal developer portals. Some come to us with an existing solution that's not working. Some are coming to us net new. It's a huge variety of companies. And so what I want to do today is bring some of the consultative approach that we have internally at ops level to you, person watching this webinar, and understanding how we think about what it means to build one, what it means to roll one out, where we've seen them succeed, where we've seen them fail, as part of this ongoing journey for developer experience, for whatever it is you're trying to achieve, the developer portal. We'll get into that later. So let's get into it. We're going to know some IDP basics. So to start, what is it? Internal Developer Portal provides developers access to the tools and knowledge they need to quickly deliver quality software. The way to think about this is you have an internal developer portal today. It might be disjointed, right? It might exist across a number of different systems. There might be parts of it that don't really exist at all, but chances are you have some version of these challenges and you have some sort of internal solution that's going to help you, or at least you'd love to have something that would help you solve them. So those challenges are, we think of as threefold. Visibility. So information is consolidated and accessible. If you want to frame it as a challenge, it's hard to find the information we need to do our jobs, right? Frame it as a solution, it's easy for everyone across the org to find the information they need. Second, we want to drive standards. So if you do follow a you build it, you own it methodology for how you folks manage and think about your software architecture, then it's often very difficult for folks to actually understand what they need to do to own and maintain their services. So the second thing that we do is we drive operational requirements, right? What does this team need to do to ensure they're shipping a minimum viable or minimum standards for their different systems? And finally, developer self-serve, right? Devs can quickly and easily perform operational tasks, right? If folks are constantly trying to figure out, I'd love to do this production work, but I can't because I'm busy trying to figure out how a Kubernetes cluster works, or I'm busy trying to provision this S3 bucket, or I'm trying to get access to database, right? These common operational tasks are often a hindrance folks doing their job. And that's one of the things that we hope Internal Developer Portal helps our customers solve. So to sum it down, if you don't like all the words on the last side, we can do this much more simply. An IDP, Internal Developer Portal, helps your engineering teams, and engineering meaning across your Eng organization, from platform down to front-end devs to back-end devs, everybody, find information they need to do their jobs and get quote-unquote stuff done, right? Do their jobs faster and find the information they need to get unblocked. And that's the core of why our customers leverage IDPs. And what we're going to talk about today is how you should go about selecting the right IDP for you to help solve these two overall challenges. So when do you need one? Chances are you already have some thought about the answer to this question because you're here listening to this webinar, right? So chances are there's something that has led you here in the first place. But here are some of the common questions our customers are asking that they're hoping IDP will help them stop asking. Who owns this service, right? We know it's down. We got paged for it. I have no idea who owns it. I have no idea who has context about it. What is this campaign? We're running a migration. We're running a language upgrade. We're trying to ensure critical vulnerability is gone. We have an upcoming audit for SOC 2. We want to understand where we stand against those initiatives across our fleet of systems. How many services do we even have? One of our customers, Hootsuite, loves to tell a story. When before they bought ops level, they asked their leadership, how many services do you have? And they said somewhere around 300. In turns out the real number was 750 something, right? So this is a question that seems simple. Many of our customers struggle to answer this question before they start to leverage ops level. What does the health of my services, right? How are they doing across our key metrics? Why do we spend so much time on basic operations, right? What do we need to do to get our devs unblocked? And my favorite question, the generic, where is that spreadsheet again? I mentioned before, right? Lots of companies already have a solution in place to solve these challenges. What that almost always looks like is a spreadsheet, or even worse, a battery of spreadsheets that are constantly out of date. People are constantly looking for them. So if you find yourself asking these questions throughout your day, it may be a good time to look at maybe an IDP makes sense or is worth the investment, either off the shelf or from a vendor, or open source to get that done. So that being said, let's talk about choosing an IDP. And again, told you about my bias already, right? We want to be upfront about this, but I think it's worthwhile to understand how we think about this problem when our founders build ops level in the first place, and what will make sense for you if you are looking at different options for your developer portal. So the first question is DIY or off the shelf. So let's talk about DIY. And I think this comes in two flavors. One is Backstage. For those who don't know, Backstage is a platform to build developer portals. It's supported by Spotify. It is big and powerful, right? It is flexible, as set up here, virtually unlimited features, right? Lots of community plugins. It's open source. That's awesome. And if you have a ton of people, you're ready to commit to this project, right? If you have a team of 10 and you love writing in TypeScript and you're ready to put in the months and years that require to stand this up, Backstage is a great solution. It is, however, not itself a developer portal, right? It is a framework to build a developer portal. You cannot plug it in and start working on it the next day, right? There's a lot of work required. It requires a dedicated team, right? Project management, engineering resources, people are going to have to build, maintain, and drive it. And that's the other thing is there's time required, right? It has to be maintained, has to be updated. You have to understand continuously what it means to own a Backstage instance over the long term. There's another way to do it yourself if you don't like Backstage, which is you can truly roll your own. And this looks like a number of different things. Some people really do, start from scratch and build it. More common, and this is especially for smaller prospective customers of ours, they start with a Git repo full of GitHub. There's a bunch of GitHub actions. There are some repos with templates. There are some spreadsheets. There's a Confluence doc. And if you sort of staple all these things together, what you get is something that closely resembles an IDP. And if you're a small company, right, if you're at 20 to 50 developers and you have a minimal service footprint, right, your stuff is pretty standardized. There isn't that many different things to track. This probably works for you, for now at least, right? That's in that small footprint. You could probably get by with some spreadsheets. You could probably get by with a set of GitHub actions, right? That'll work. It's when you start to work at scale that there are other options that I think are worth considering. And so if you don't want to do it yourself, you can buy it off the shelf. So the advantages, right? It's ready to go. Right? You can start working in days, right? The data model is there. The API is there and documented. There are at least at ops level, onboarding docs and guides and training and people who will help you do these things, right? And if it goes down, there's people who care about it, right? Vendor updates it, vendor maintains it. There's a whole another group of people somewhere who are building features against it all the time, right? It is a nicer experience to not have to do this yourself and let you and your devs focus on your actual jobs, right? Of delivering software that will help your company make money or delight your user or whoever it might be. And finally, again, to toot my own horn for a second, support and success, right? What I'm talking about with you today is something that I work with our customers every day. You get someone like me, at least at ops level, who help you understand what our best practices, what does adoption look like. This might be your first time rolling out Developer Portal. This is not my first time. Right? When I work with a new customer, right? I've worked with 50 some odd customers doing this work. My team has as well. This is something that we do every day and think about very carefully. There are cons. Not as customizable, right? Roadmaps are something that every vendor in our space has, but they're not the same as what your specific needs might be. And if you need an incredible high level of customization, Backstage or spreadsheets, right, are infinitely customizable. You can always add whatever columns you like to a spreadsheet. And similarly, if self-hosted might be tricky, Ops Level does have a self-hosted offering. Not all of our competitors do. It's something that, again, worth considering depending on the level of security and you need for this thing. And finally, money, right? Backstage its cost is primarily in hours. Our cost is in dollars and hours. And so worth considering, right? How much does this cost? What does your budget look like? And what is it you have to spend? So again, different solutions for different people. But we thought this would be a good, at least, framing on how we at least are thinking about this problem of when does it make sense to go open source or do it yourself versus when it makes sense to buy off the shelf from Ops Level or one of the other vendors. So with all that in mind, let's get into our frame methodology for how we think you should evaluate and roll out your developer portal. We've done a lot of rollouts, right? This is how we coach our customers through it. And I think is a helpful framing for you folks in thinking about how should you choose a developer portal that'll actually support our use cases. So let's get into it. We're going to talk through this in 5 phases. Each of these are not equal in size, right? And but it's a good, I think, framework to understand. Here is how you should begin to think about this problem as a set of cascading questions. So let's start. What are your goals, right? Why are we doing this work? What metrics, business outcomes will this impact? So some samples here: reliability, security, developer velocity. Sometimes these are somewhat fuzzy, like we're trying to improve our overall developer experience as measured by survey data. Sometimes it's really specific, right? I talked to a customer earlier this week. They want to improve their MTTR by 50%. And Ops Level is a big part of that story. That's awesome, right? But whatever your goal might be, that's always the place to start, which is, why are we doing this work? Of all the things we could be working on, what needle is this going to move? How does this help our business? And the more specific you can be here, the better. From our goals, we get to our use cases. So to support those goals of MTTR or DORA or developer experience, when specifically are people actually going to do this? And you can think about this as logging into the portal. You can think about this as just, when are they going to consume this data, right? How will this help them do their jobs? In case of MTTR, right? It becomes during an incident, users will log into our dev portal to quickly see the dependencies for their services, right? Really clear use case. During an incident, they're going to do this activity to help them stand up back their services faster. So from our goals, we get our use cases. From our use cases, we get our data. So when we're on RDP, what will people be able to do? What will they see, right? What does an MVP version look like? If we want to cover a particular use case, say dev onboarding or incident response, or just a better dev experience when looking for information, what data do we need in the catalog to support those use cases? What data do we need inside of our IDP in terms of actions, cataloging, whatever it might be, to actually support it? So again, our goals lead us to our use cases. Our use cases lead us to our data requirements. And from all of that, we get to work, which is what data, now that we know the data that we need, where do we actually ingest it from? How hard will this be, right? What is the thing that we need to do what is the data we need to input into Ops Level to make this work? What integrations do we need? How do we maintain and sustain these integrations? And that leads us to the final chapter here, which is ownership. You think about the long term of this project. So the problem with a spreadsheet, right, is the spreadsheet is out of date the second you click out of it. You import a bunch of data into a spreadsheet. You say, wow, how a helpful spreadsheet. Next week, that spreadsheet's out of date. So what does it mean to maintain and update this? Who is going to be responsible for this long term, right? So we're going to do work to stand this up the first time, and then we're going to make a plan for how we're going to own this and maintain it long term. So we've gone all the way from our goals of what we're trying to achieve as a business, again, to review, to use cases, when people are actually going to log in, to the data required to support those use cases, to the work required to create that data, to the long-term ownership of those systems. This sounds like a lot, and it's, I promise, not a one-week process, but we think this is the right framework to think about of, if we want to buy an IDP to help us do these things, we can get all the way down to what was this going to mean for us in terms of maintaining this as part of our systems within our organization. Okay, so that's our framework for how we think about this. I think it's also a helpful framing when you are thinking about which solution makes the most sense for you. So in that said, let's get into some what we think of as the key features of an internal developer portal. So I'm going to start with, I mean, I've worked with developers long enough to know they love a zero index list, but we'll start with, I think it was feature zero. And it's a feature, it's not really a feature so much as a characteristic that feeds across all the different parts of your portal, which is it's automated and integrated. So your developer portal should be automated. It requires minimal toil to build and maintain. We could talk here for a long time about YAML, if you want to talk about YAML, right? But this is the idea of catalogs are not easy. And the more distributed your database is going to be, the more it requires human beings to actually go and update a spreadsheet or update a particular file each time there's a change. The faster that service is going to get out of date and the harder it's going to be to stand up. Ops level solves this problem by having a whole bunch of features for automated service discovery and maintenance. But this is a hard problem, regardless of what vendor you choose. You should think about automation for your checks, think about automation for your actions, think about automation for your catalog. And it's integrated. I want to be clear what I mean by this one, which is your IDP should not be a standalone system. It should be part of a broader set of processes and systems and a method for how you folks ship software. That is, the IDP should be baked into it. So when you write a check in your IDP to ensure your services are using a minimum viable language version or don't have X number of critical vulnerabilities in Y period, that should be part of an operations review. That should be part of performance. That should be even integrated into your CI/CD, right? It should be part of the story of what it means to build and deploy software at your company. So automated, integrated. Okay, that's going to be true for all the features we're going to talk about next. That's why it gets to be feature zero. So feature one, catalog. The value here is, back to my earlier point around, we want to make sure everyone in the organization has the information they need to do their job. All of this sits on the foundation of a catalog. So it has a number of attributes. I won't go into all of these. Today, we think about completeness. It's complete, it's up to date, it's discoverable, it's searchable. I often use a metaphor here of thinking about if you were to walk into a public library and there's a computer up front saying, here's our catalog. Think about what makes that catalog useful, right? It has all the books. It has information about each of the books. It is current, right? You're not worried that this is the library circa 1985, and so nothing there is useful anymore. It's discoverable, right? We don't put that computer in some random closet. Instead, it's right there, easy to use, easy to access, integrated, again, back to feature zero, into our daily life, and it's searchable, right? I don't have to know the exact name in kebab case of each of my services or systems to be able to find what I'm looking for within the catalog itself. And I'll show you what that looks like inside ops level. Again, you can also do this yourselves. We think we have a pretty good catalog, right? That's why we're here today. It's why our customers buy ops level and renew with ops level as often as they do. So we think we have a pretty good one. But again, I hope this is inspiration for if you do decide to build your own, what that could look like. So we track dependencies, right? How does this service depend on other services? We have a pretty rich model for what data we track against those services, right? Aliases down here, we have arbitrary tags, we have service metadata around product and language and framework and tier, right? You can see on these tabs up here, operation centers, dependencies, API docs, right? A whole suite of information we provide about this particular service. Within the operations tab, right, we can go even deeper. We'll show deploys, we'll show quick links to tools. Think about the MTTR use case, right? I mentioned at the top of this presentation. You could think about, or webinar, whatever we're doing. You can think about, okay, where do I find the metrics for this service? Where do I find the logs? And then the cool thing about ops level, at least, and again, there's some other vendors as well, all this information is queryable and mutatable through our API, through our Slack integration as well. So if you don't want to consume this data information here, that's fine. You can automate the ingestion of this information and integrate us with other systems and processes. Okay, feature number 2. Maturity tracker. One of the most critical things you can do with your catalog is understand where do each of those systems and services fall against our shared definition of good, right? I own this service. What does it mean to own a service at my company? What does it mean to write production-ready code? Some companies have a very clear answer to this question. So other companies don't. Some companies have hundreds of question-long surveys they send out every quarter to ask people how they're doing per service, right? What we look for is tight integrations, clearly defined ownership, and the automation of those checks and requirements, right? How can we ensure that You don't have to trust a team when they tell you, yes, recent latest version of X. We're just going to look directly into their repo and see the version number. So, and what this allows you to do is say, in an operations review, in meeting with the team, say these services are meeting our expectations. Those are not. These systems are at a minimum threshold. Those aren't. Let's talk about how we can help you get your service up to speed. If you are in a situation where service owners are owning services for the first time, right? You're going through that DevOps transformation. This is especially powerful to be able to say, what does it mean to own a service? This is what it means. It means maintaining these set of rules against those services. For ops level, what that looks like. We have a maturity tracker. We measure services across a number of dimensions. We consolidate it into a simple prioritized list, right? In our case, we work from beginner to bronze to silver to gold. You can see a number of checks across different categories, right? Reliability, security, and quality, as well as, right? And checks across a number of different functions, right? We can look into your Git. We can ingest data from other data sources. We can look at ops level itself to understand how these services are doing overall. For you folks who might own an IDP, we have a flexible, filterable, extensible model for how to actually create and drive those checks, right? You can see here, some of these checks are filtered, right? This one only applies to tier 2 or above. Some of these checks only apply to Ruby services, right? You can apply a whole number of filters across these different levels and categories. And all of this is supported by reporting, right? Back to us talking about integration. Our goal is not to just have this data live somewhere. Our goal is to actually make this part of what it means to build and ship software with our customers. So it means is they can actually report on how they're doing both overall and over time at achieving those different goals across service maturity. Finally, our last feature here is the Action Center. So we talk about this in terms of developer self-service. What we're trying to do is remove friction. We want actions that can cover routine tasks. We can trigger automation of other workflows. We can send message, trigger alerts, right? Create new services and components from templates. The idea for us here is we want to be able to take, usually when I work with customers on this, what we start with is, okay, if you're the SRE team, what are you getting slacked about most? What are the things people are constantly asking you for, constantly bugging you for, that you could say, instead of asking us to do this, hit this button, right? Or you have this long guide for how to do something today that requires devs to work in a technology they've never worked in before. That's hard. That's risky. Instead, automate it, right? Create a easy to fire webhook with a form builder, fire off the webhook, do the thing safely, securely, reliably, and quickly. So that's the Action Center. It's something that is hard for me to provide examples of because it's so deeply extensible and customizable. But the general value proposition here is let devs work on dev work, let ops people do ops work, let them drive those actions and processes from a single place rather than a series of distributed systems or GitHub Actions or spreadsheet, whatever it might be. So as I said before, right, attributes. We think an Action Center should be convenient, right? It's easy to understand where it lives, how it works. It's documented. Go to see what I have to do and when I should do it. Back to my point earlier about the catalog, it's discoverable, right? I can quickly figure out where does this thing live. I'm not hunting through Git or looking through Confluence trying to figure it out. And finally, it's auditable, right? We want to trust but verify here. We want to understand who did what, when, and how. And that is technology that's baked in, at least to ops levels version is offering, but can be baked into yours as well to understand we want to give devs this freedom to operate. We want to make sure they're operating safely. So for us, what that looks like in our tool, we use a technology called Cookie Cutter to help services for a service creation story. Give us information about the service. You fire it off. It will actually go in and create a repo in Git. We also support actions. So we have a number of sample ones here. Customers can and do build their own. So you can see a number here related to incidents and on-call. So deploy freezes, deploy unfreezes, roll back a last deploy, trigger release pipeline, page the on-call, right? A whole series of things we can do to help devs move faster and get back to the work of actually restoring their services or building new services in the first place. So to boil this down, right? This is all the content I have for today. To summarize, you can build your own. If you have the resources, time, capabilities to do so, right? Power to you. If you also require a ton of flexibility and specific features, right? A fully implemented Backstage is hard to beat if you have the years and the effort and the people to actually implement Backstage at scale. Portals should be tied to value. When selecting a portal, right? This is not like, oh, this would be neat. We really recommend always being able to answer, here is the specific thing we're trying to achieve, right? And that from there, we can justify the cost in either hours or dollars to build, maintain, and justify its existence in the long term. And finally, we do think it should have these different parts. You don't have to have all the parts in one website or one place right away, but we do think your developer portal can and should contain these different elements. It should be cataloging, right? You should have actions, you should have survey assessments. These are going to be interconnected, mutually reinforcing pieces. And again, maybe to start, this is a series of spreadsheets and actions and GitHub Actions or GitLab Actions, if those exist. But long term, the idea is to actually have those in one place for devs to quickly serve what they need to do their jobs. So that's all I have for today. If you do have any questions, thoughts, feelings about this, want to continue this conversation, you can find me. I'm Ezra at opslevel.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to message me that way. I will also say OpsLevel is also, if you want to trial it out, we do have a free trial motion as well. Go to opslevel.com and self-serve on that if you'd like. So thanks so much. That's all I have for today. And if you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out.